What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to go over the second installment of the Gettleman Project. Meant to have this up for you guys a couple of days ago, but we still got plenty of time before the draft, and I will be live a lot leading up into that draft. The whole week, we're going to be talking draft, believe me, and I'll definitely have my first live mock draft up with you guys on Thursday. Going to have a couple of Giants YouTubers on for that, so be on the lookout for that. But in this video, I want to go over our second installment. In our first version of the Gettleman Project and our 6th-round mock draft, I had the New York Giants going offensive line. I had them going with Rashawn Slater, a prospect that I'm very much in favor of potentially drafting. I think he's versatile. He can play on the inside. You can play him at the tackle. You can play all 5 spots on the offensive line. He's very technically skilled, and most people feel like he may very well be the most pro-ready offensive lineman in this year's draft. Now, in this mock, I'm not going to have that being the case. And if you ask me right now, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, and in my first mock draft, I had them going wide receiver. In the end, based on what I'm hearing about Carolina, based on the fact that I think both Sewell and Slater could potentially be off the board when we pick, I may be leaning that the New York Giants may in fact be going a wide receiver in the first round because they may feel like he is the best player available. But like I said, we're going to go over all the options. The Giants could easily trade back. They could easily take an edge. There's been rumors that they're interested in a lot of edges in this draft class. But in this one, as you saw in the title and on the thumbnail, the New York Giants are going to go wide receiver in the first round. And from there, we're going to see how it plays out with the rest of the draft. Now, unlike my last draft, like I said, what I want to do in all these drafts is kind of show you guys some prospects that I have my eye on that the New York Giants, I think, could potentially be targeting due to the fact that maybe they're versatile, due to the fact that maybe they went to one of the schools that one of the coaches coach on this team, which is what I did with one of these prospects in this draft. The Giants have shown in the past that they like familiarity. So that's what I tried to do. But I think the most important thing, and I think a lot of things that people don't do when they do these mock drafts, are look at how they fit with the team, more so than maybe the best available player, because there may be a great player in the 3rd round that may not fit what the New York Giants are trying to do. He may be more of a 4-3 D end that doesn't necessarily fit our scheme. So that's what I tried to do here. But with our first pick, no surprise here, like I had in my first mock draft, and I've thought he's going to fall to the Giants for about 2 months now. May not be the case. I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Miami Dolphins take him, and if he's off the board, well, then Jalen Waddle becomes much more of a realistic possibility. But in the first round, I had the New York Giants taking Devonta Smith. And the first thing we'll talk about is the potential cons. The only real con with Devonta Smith that people worry about are, one, his age. He is 22 years old. He's much more advanced than some of these players, and some of the skeptics will tell you, well, he's 22. He was going up against a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds. He was taking advantage of that. A lot of these guys are a little bit younger than Devonta Smith. But the real main thing that you hear about with Devonta Smith all the time is his size. He's listed at about 6'1", 175 pounds. He's not really 175 pounds. He's 175 pounds soaking wet. He's probably closer to 165, but he could certainly bulk up as he enters the NFL. Those are really the only cons with this guy. Now, you may have to get a little bit creative with Devonta Smith. You may have to put him in motion, much like they did a lot at Alabama, things like that. But in terms of how he fits the New York Giants, out of all the wide receivers, even though I've come out and said that I actually prefer Jalen Waddle, right now, when I look at this New York Giants receiving core, I think that Devonta Smith is actually a better fit. For the simple reason of all the wide receivers in this draft class, if you listen to any expert, if you watch any game film, he is probably the best route runner in this year's draft class. And if he's not the best, he's more than likely going to be the best when we're on the clock if Jamar Chase is off the board. The guy runs like a deer. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. He's got long legs. He creates separations. He could go up and catch the 50-50, and he would be an inevitable replacement for a guy like Sterling Shepard, who, of course, has injury history, things like that. If the Giants were to draft Devonta Smith, more than likely, I would think that that would mean that Darius Slayton would probably be on the bench, along with John Ross. I mean, your 3rd receiver would be Sterling Shepard, but he may be too good to pass up at number 11. And in this video, that's what I had them doing. Last year at Alabama, we all know he won the Heisman Trophy after Waddle went down, but his numbers are ridiculous. He caught for 1,856 yards and 23 touchdowns, becoming one of the only receivers in my lifetime to win the award. So he's certainly gifted, he's certainly talented, and if the New York Giants get him, believe me, a large portion of this fan base will be very excited. He's a guy that would definitely add a different element to this core. If you were to add Smith, you'd have the guy that could catch the 50-50 with Golladay. You'd have a speedster off the bench with Ross. You'd have Shepard, who's a more of a slot guy, a tough wide receiver. Smith would kind of be your all-around wide receiver. And at that point, I don't think the New York Giants would have to really spend any more draft capital at that position for a few more years. You'd certainly have your number 1 and 2 options for the foreseeable future for Daniel Jones. So in this draft, we're going to have Devonta Smith going to the New York Giants at number 6 overall. Second round. Now, in the first one, I went offensive line. I've come out and said several times on my live streams, if we elect to go wide receiver, I probably want to go offensive line in the second. And at the latest, the third. And I kind of played with it, and I looked at some of the prospects that I could see the New York Giants going here. In the end, I elected to go offensive line, and I went back and forth with 2 different prospects. The first guy who I didn't take is Landon Dickerson, and I could absolutely see the New York Giants taking him. He grew up a Giants fan. The New York Giants reportedly have already interviewed him. He went to Alabama. The problem I have with him, the guy's a tough football player. When you watch this film, tough football player. And he's versatile. He played tackle in high school. He played guard at college. And then when he got to Alabama, he played both the guard and the center spot when Deontay Brown came back. So he's versatile. He can move around. He's regarded as one of the better centers in this draft class. The injury history. The guy's had 2 torn ACLs while at college. And that's something that I personally worry about, which is why in the end, I elected to go with the guard, Wyatt Davis. And I don't know if Davis will be there. And I know Bobby from Talking Giants is not the biggest fan of him. I've seen him talk about it on Twitter. Listen, I've watched this game film. One thing I could say for sure about Wyatt Davis, that guy can move for a guard. He is a big man. He's 6'4", 315 pounds. He's very athletic for an interior offensive lineman. High upside. The one knock that I hear consistently when I watch these game films about him, when I read scouting reports, he struggles with finishing his blocks at times. Maybe he needs to get a little bit meaner, but the upside is certainly there. I look at this Giants offensive line right now. We don't know if Will Hernandez is going to be a part of the future of this team, and we don't know if Shane Lemieux will absolutely be a starter going forward. You get a guy like Wyatt Davis, he's probably going to be the best guard available for you in the second round, if he's even there, or a guy like Dickerson, and you could shift Gates to the guard, and I think that's the way to go in the second round of this year's draft, if in fact we do elect to go with a guy like Devonta Smith in the first, or even potentially a guy like Micah Parsons. But in this draft, we went wide receiver 1. We take the best available guard on the board, and in this scenario, we elected to go with Wyatt Davis. The next prospect up at number 3 is the more research I do on this guy, the more I get excited, and the more I see, wow, this guy could really fit what the New York Giants are looking to do on defense. He's a tremendous coverage linebacker. The upside is there. Now, when I've watched film on Jabril Cox, and I've watched a bunch of film on him over the last week or so, actually tweeted out to you guys, the one thing that some people do point out, sometimes he'll give up on plays, and you don't want that. You do not want that. He transferred from North Dakota State to LSU. He played very well at LSU. The stats don't pop off the page. He had 5 tackles in the Senior Bowl, in which he really stood out, and we know the New York Giants historically value that. He had 1 sack, 3 interceptions, and 58 total tackles at LSU this year. But this guy to me is like a chess piece. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that could drop back in coverage, and that is where I think he'd fit for the New York Giants at that linebacker position. I really like the fit if we were to bring him in. He stands at 6'3", 232. An interesting guy that I think would fit our scheme very well. And a guy to keep your eye on. He's athletic for his size, no doubt about it. Got to work a little bit in terms of the angles when tackling and becoming a better tackler overall. But an athletic piece that would really fit our scheme. Next up in the 4th round. And I'm not too sure where this guy's going to go. Didn't hear a lot about him. And then I started to look into interior defensive linemen in this year's draft. And because I think it's something that the New York Giants need, maybe not so much this year, but definitely going forward. Because you look at B.J. Hill, he's a free agent next year. You look, obviously, we lost Alvin Tomlinson. You don't know about Austin Johnson. We have a short-term answer that we brought in free agency this year at the nose tackle, but we don't have a long-term answer. And this guy's not a nose tackle, but he's a versatile piece that you could use on that defensive line. And we're talking 4th round here. And I've seen Milton Williams soar up draft charts. He had an unbelievable pro day. This guy is big. He is mean. He's 6'4", 284. He actually came into college for Louisiana Tech, I think he plays for, as a defensive end. He only weighed 230 pounds. He reinvented himself, put on a ton of weight, played on the interior. The guy is very athletic. He had 4.5 sacks last year and 10 tackles for a loss. His pro day numbers were off the chart. He broke records. He had a 6.87 on the three-cone drill, which is insane for an interior defensive lineman. He had a 4.25 on the 20-yard shuttle, a 4.61 40 time for a 284-pound defensive tackle, 38.5 on the vertical. definitely a guy with athletic upside and a guy to keep your eye on. He also is versatile. One of the more versatile defensive linemen in this year's draft. He can play both on the inside and the out. So a guy that I really liked and a guy that I wanted to bring up that maybe the New York Giants could look to bring in. He's projecting more as a 4-3 end, but with his size, being that he played DT, I think you could play him in a lot of packages in a 4-3 alignment, either on the end or as a DT on the outside, and he could probably even project to be a 3-4 defensive end. So I like Milton Williams as a round 3 or 4 potential target for the New York Giants. Next up, I'm going to go with another defensive lineman because these are just guys that I liked when I did some research that I think could fit what we're looking to do. Taquan Graham is not or I think that's how it's pronounced, either Taquan or Taquan, is not a guy who had tremendous production well at Texas. I think he only had 2 or 2.5 sacks last year. But again, versatility. That's what he brings. He ran a 4.9 340, 32 on the bench reps. He stands at 6'3", 290, only 6 career sacks, but a very versatile player. And when you watch him on film, you see the upside there. He's pretty good against the run, good at diagnosing the run. The same can be said for Milton Williams, the last draft prospect I talked about. Versatile player, 3-4 defensive end, and played some defensive tackle as well. Very quick first step. That's one thing that definitely jumped off to me when I watched him. He's strong. And he does not have a full arsenal of pass moves yet. That's what I've read, and that's kind of what I saw when I watched the game film. So definitely keep your eyes on Taquan Graham as well as a potential 5th or 6th round. Well, we don't have a 5th round pick, but a 6th round target for the New York Giants, and another guy that's a scheme fit. And then the last pick that I elected to go with was with the running back. I've talked about several times that when I look at this New York Giants running back core, with Saquon Barkley coming off the injury, we don't know what we have there. We brought in another running back, but I think we could use a third guy. And I think we could use a downhill runner. Not to mention, he's got ties to Rob Sale. Rob Sale, of course, was the offensive line coach for the same school that Elijah Mitchell went to. Elijah Mitchell produced well at college. He had 1,147 yards in his junior year with 16 rushing touchdowns behind one of the better running offenses in the entire country. Last year in 10 games, he had 878 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he actually increased his yards per carry at 6.2 yards per carry. His pro day is where he really stood out. He ran a 4.32 40 times. Some clocked him at 4.38, but regardless, that is blazing speed for a guy that is known as a downhill runner at 5'11", 218 pounds. And with the ties to Rob Sale, I think Elijah Mitchell could make a ton of sense from the Raging Cajuns for the New York Giants in the 6th round as a potential running back prospect. So those are just some guys that I wanted to go over with you guys. In this draft, I went wide receiver in the first. I then got what I feel is our biggest need with the interior offensive lineman. I got a chess piece on defense that could play some coverage linebacker, something that I think could be an added element to this team with some upside there in the 3rd round. Then I went strong with the defensive line, guys that are versatile pieces that I could see playing on this defensive line in both the 4th and 6th, maybe long-term answers there at the position, and then a nice backup running back in Elijah Mitchell from the Raging Cajuns in the 6th round. But there you have it. I'm sure I'll have another one of these up in probably 4 or 5 days as the draft is fast approaching. If you have any suggestions as to what you would like to see in terms of a scenario, drop them in the comments below. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.